Living water. I remember walking barefoot along a dirt road in Demopolis, Alabama, early in the morning to get water for the day from the nearest well. When I was young, we'd spend a few weeks of each summer there. My mother's sisters had not yet left Alabama, as she had already done, so whenever we could, we visited. My memories of this time are full of the beautiful ordinary of life. Think a gaggle of cousins, before computers, before phones, before social media. Think backyard scavenger hunts. Think bacon and eggs with homemade biscuits almost every day. And some adult or another reminding us to close the seemingly always open screen door. All of us gathered around a single television at a certain time of the day to watch our favorite show. For sure, lots of fun, but we did have chores. This was the 1970s, and my aunt, who lived in a tiny rural community, didn't have running water. In fact, a single well served the area, and it was our job to fetch the water for the day. So we'd get up early and walk crusty-eyed and very much unkempt along the road before it got too hot. We'd go to fill as many empty jugs as we could carry with fresh water. I'm sure my cousins enjoyed the help on this routine jaunt. Having their big city cousins around made any chores easier, right? As they say, many hands make light work. And they could laugh at us newbies as we tried to avoid the stinging of red ants on our city soft feet, or when our young and unpracticed arms were fatigued by carrying our share of the day's bounty. On the way back, the heat would start to kick in, and by then, all of us were a little less willing to see our task as a joyful adventure. But I remember the sound of water as we pumped it from the well to fill jug after jug after jug. Living water. I read today's text with the memory of that journey to the well and to the story just 2 chapters back in John 5 about the paralyzed man at the pool of Bethesda, the one who'd been by that pool for 38 years waiting for the stirring of water that could heal and transform his life, who lay beside water he could see but could not reach, waiting for a system that was never going to work for him. The healing at that pool was limited and competitive, so first one in, first one healed. This man had no one to carry him in and no one to help him to the edge. 38 years. Not because the water didn't have power or wasn't real, but because something was wrong with the system. His body had been deemed unworthy of its mercy, and so he waited beside the very thing that could have made him whole. The water at this pool was never really for everyone, and it still isn't. And yet, we still consume. Water is vital. AI data centers, the engines of our artificial intelligence, consume billions of gallons of water to sustain machines that present themselves as an endless supply of knowledge. They operate on the assumption of the eternal, and yet they will always want more, always need more. And where do they build these machines? In Black and brown neighborhoods where land is cheap and resistance is expected to be minimal. Sacrifice zones, they call them. The same communities that have always been asked to bear the cost of someone else's progress. So living water. And so I'll read the text again. On the last day of the festival, the great day, while Jesus was standing there, he cried out, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me, and let the one who believes in me drink." As the scripture has said, out of the believer's heart shall flow rivers of living water. Now he said this about the Spirit, which believers in him were to receive. For as yet there was no Spirit, because Jesus was not yet glorified. The festival mentioned is the Festival of Tabernacles, Israel's great celebration of wilderness and wandering and God's provision in it. On the last day, at the height of the festivities, the people commemorated with a water libation ritual. With torches blazing, music playing, people dancing, the city of Jerusalem stayed awake all night. And at daybreak, a priest would descend to the pool of Siloam to fill a golden pitcher with water drawn from the spring and carry it back up to the temple. And there at the altar, he poured water as both prayer and proclamation, a prayer for rain, and a living enactment of Isaiah's promise that one day the people would draw water with joy from the well of salvation. The Mishnah itself declares, "One who has not seen the rejoicing at the place of the water drawing has never seen rejoicing in their life." So this was a thing, and a time was had, right? It is into this moment, at the height of the ritual, that Jesus stands up and raises his voice. Jesus stands and cries out, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me, believe and drink." Believers, he said, would drink of the Spirit which would flow from him. It would dwell within them as living water, bringing continual refreshment and peace. "Come to me," he says. You are still thirsty. Can you imagine how quiet it got? The silence, and can you imagine the questions, even internal and externally? Jesus names their thirst and reminds them that no ritual, no performance, no human can or will satisfy our thirst. Our thirst is satisfied through the gift of the Spirit, which comes from him, and that gift of abundance, as in flowing rivers of living water, is for anyone who believes. Jesus alludes to an endless supply for all who are thirsty. So jugs that empty by nightfall, that have to be refilled, pools that heal only the quickest, rituals that inspire but never can truly satisfy. Well, we've always been drawn to systems that promise more than they can deliver. Here, Jesus does not promise, Jesus provides. And what he provides is not a larger jug or a shorter line at a pool or a more elaborate ritual. It is the Spirit itself, inexhaustible, uncontainable, and free. For a people collectively exhausted by never having enough, that is not just good news. That is the only news that matters. Jesus transcends the systems that fail us. He pours the Spirit within us so that living water is no longer a destination, somewhere we have to journey toward. It's in us. These beautifully, wonderfully made bodies, it moves through us, flowing from us into our communities and into the world as living water, inexhaustible living water. Jesus is the source. Our gospel writer creates a meaningful pause here because he wants us to know that the Spirit had not yet come. John knows that all of this probably sounds more of Jesus's kind of confusing talk. The "I'm going and where I'll be, you cannot go," standing before them with this powerful proclamation seems to only create more division and unbelief. It creates more questions. but it feels right now to pause. On Pentecost Sunday, I'm glad we begin here with this little text, these 3 verses that remind us of a time when there was no Spirit, where believers have not yet received the Spirit, have not known of its peace and power, and I wonder if we might place ourselves in such a moment, imagining the Spirit as yet not among us, and perhaps position ourselves or posture our hearts for such an outpouring, and then maybe breathe into it. Because the Spirit did come. The Spirit Jesus promised, it came. Rivers of living water poured out on all flesh. That is not a future promise any longer. It is a present reality. Pentecost happened, and the Spirit that fell then is here now. So sit with me for just a moment. All of us in this room, of one mind, one heart, people of little or great faith, people of questions and doubts, people of hope, believers of all kinds. Could we gather to imagine this space filled by the Spirit, the wind, the fire, the Spirit as water, the Spirit as breath, the revolution of its arrival? Could we imagine that? Noticing any shifting in the air as you do that. The wind, the water, the breath, the fire. The Spirit Jesus promised, it came, and it is here now. Can you hear the invitation for you to come? And maybe stay, linger a little while. Let your thirst be satisfied, be filled. The Spirit Jesus promised has come. It is here now, moving among us, waiting to be received, trusted, and through us, released. How will you respond? And will you believe? Those walks to the well, we made them on the energy of our young bodies, driven by a single purpose: water enough for sustenance, for life. We went because the water would run out. We went because our family needed us to go. And our brother at the pool at Bethesda, he waited. He waited and wanted help. But if we're honest, we do understand that what he really wanted was to be seen, to be counted worthy, to imagine himself beyond his condition. So water's never just really water. Water is wholeness. Water for him too was life. And so, living water, where will you go to find it? How long will you wait? How much do you need? Stay here for a moment as we consider these questions. Where will you go to find it? How long will you wait? And how much do you need? And what if the source was already closer than any road you've been walking on already? Nearer than any journey you were ever told to make? Jesus promised the gift of the Spirit as living water. And God declares not as suggestion or possibility, but as a promise. In the last days, I will pour out my Spirit on all flesh. All flesh. Not only the wealthy or resourced, not only the worthy or the fastest. God promises to pour out that Spirit on all, not only the billionaire class who gets to make some of those decisions about sacrifice zones. No, all. And so on a great day like today, Jesus stands and invites everyone who is thirsty, still thirsty, tired and thirsty, waiting and thirsty, in need of this inexhaustible supply, still thirsty. Jesus says, come. We'll take a moment to just sit with these questions and this imagining of the Spirit filling this place. And it can be in every way you need it to be. If it's fire or wind or water or breath. Take a moment to respond to that invitation. Will you believe?